Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Miller. I'm a recovering alcoholic. Oh, I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and a stroke survivor. And today I'm going to talk about personality changes of a drunk. Um, these changes that drinking did for my personality were for a long time the reason why I drank, or one of the many reasons why I drank. And over time, years, these personality changes became the reason why I couldn't drink anymore. So I wanted to share some stories. Why am I sharing these stories? Because they don't feel good to share. And that means I should share them because I've talked about in the past about getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Well, this morning I was reminded of all of these stories, um, these things that happened while I was drinking that are humiliating, are just not stuff I'm proud of, but at the time I thought I was so cool. So I wanted to share a few of those, and some of you who know me well may think, "Oh my, really?" Yeah. So these are some things that I did while I was drinking, and I'll try to give you an estimate of what period in my life I did these things. Um, so I was in a sorority in college, and Zeta Tau Alpha chapter, and we were. I, I forgive me, Zetas who are listening, but we were very much known. I think maybe it was just me. Thought we were the drinkers. We were the gals that hung out with the guys. Kind of thing. And maybe that was just my perception of it from where I sat when I was drinking constantly when I was in college. So of course that was my perception. Anyway, when I graduated, we had a reunion, and I think it was several years later. Um, so we all got together I think, so I'm going to say I think a lot because much of it is a little foggy for me, but I think we were in Virginia Beach, and we all were drinking. That's all I remember. We went to a bar, and we were all meeting up and stuff, and hugs everywhere, and because of this discomfort that I always felt in social events, I just started throwing down alcohol, and this excuse of, well, we're all getting together, it's a reunion, that means I was throwing down even more than I normally would. So, what ended up happening is I recall being on the bar dancing. There was somebody else on the bar next to me, another sorority sister. I won't say your name, don't worry. But I remember being up on the bar and dancing and like singing some song or something like that. And at the time that I was doing that, I was thinking, how fun I was. And when I think back on it, I think of how embarrassing that is, that I was up there doing that. I mean, ugh, I don't know. But what I remembered this morning as I was thinking through that story was that what happened later in the night is that I fell down like 4 times that night. I fell down out on the street when we were walking to the next bar. I fell down in a bar into just, ugh, like old beer and everything all over the floor. I mean, I must have just looked and smelled atrocious that night. So, while everybody else was just enjoying this reunion, I don't remember hardly any of it. I don't even remember. I remember talking to about 2 people and actually, conversing. Other than that, I was just so centered on drinking. Another bar story is I went to Shenanigans in Leesburg, and this was close to the end of my drinking. And they had converted it so that there was a dance floor. Now, I shared a couple weeks ago how my daughter um, does not think, it feels very strongly that I am not a dancer. And so I note the last story, I was on the bar dancing. So this story, I'm at Shenanigans. I'm out dancing with a couple friends or one friend, not sure, can't remember. But I do remember my boyfriend, same boyfriend that I have now, went to the bathroom, and I thought that that was the perfect opportunity so that I didn't embarrass him, to do some break dancing on the floor in Shenanigans. So I did the moonwalk, but that just wasn't enough for me. So I decided that I needed to do the worm on the floor at Shenanigans in the bar. And again, I thought I was cool, and now I think it's just humiliating. So there's story number 2. Another bar story. I was actually in college, and we were at a bar. It was me and my roommate, and we were kind of early to get there, of course, because we wanted to be there as soon as they open and stay until they closed. There was a well-known artist that was playing that night, and he just happened to be, he had gone to my college, Longwood, and was dating one of my sorority sisters for a while as well. Anyway, he was up there singing, and my friend and I decided that we were going to roll around on the floor, pretend fighting, right in the middle of where he was playing. So he actually stopped the music and asked her and I to leave the bar if we were continuing to act like that. So that, once again, terribly humiliating. Another bar story. I went to Hagerstown to meet a friend of mine who lived in Hagerstown, and another friend also had gone there. And so we were just going to go bar hopping, I guess. So we were sitting at the bar. The next thing and only thing that I can remember is that we had a drink. Each of us had a drink. There was a man that came up to talk to us, and that's the last thing I remember. The next thing I knew, I was at home. So I have spots of remembering um, getting a cab. And I remember at one point we were in my friend's car, but we were all going to sleep in the parking lot or something like that. And I was like, I'm not sleeping in this parking lot. So I took a cab home. Um, but I never did find my wallet. I don't know where that. So we think that somebody put something in our drinks, but um, this this is an example of how important it is to keep your wits about you when you are at a bar, because you never know what's going to happen if you turn away from a drink. So, anyway, that's what happened, and you can imagine my boyfriend was a little agitated with me as, my car was still in Hagerstown the next day. So, he had to drive me back up there to get it. So, that was not fun. Another bar story. I'm almost done, I swear. I went to Glory Days in Charlestown. I had just gotten in, um, well, I would say an argument with my boyfriend, but I think the only person that was arguing was me. I think the only person that was angry was me. And to this day, I still have no idea what my problem was. But I ended up leaving. I didn't tell him. I just left. I went to Glory Days. I was going to sit at the bar and drink. And so that's what I did. I made friends with all these people in the bar. I just went there. I was going to have one drink. And the next thing, I'm like 4 or 5 glasses of wine under. I'm friends with everybody at the bar. There's games on the TV and stuff like that. Anyway, I don't know how many hours I was there, but it was going to be closing, just to give you an idea. So I needed to leave. And I knew that I shouldn't be driving, but I did it anyway. I don't have an excuse for it at all. I should have gotten a cab. Back then it was cabs. We didn't have Ubers yet, I don't think, or else I wasn't cool enough to know about Uber yet. So I drove. I ended up driving, um, I would say several miles until I realized that I was actually endangering other people's lives. That's what I realized. And so I pulled into, at the time, was a strip joint called the Golden Horseshoe. So I pulled in there and parked my car, and I went in to the entrance and spoke to the person at the entrance, and I said I needed to call a taxi. They didn't want to let me in because they don't let people like me in there. I don't know. I guess they only let guys in there. I have no idea. I don't frequent them. So anyway, the guy let me come in, and I sat by the front door, and he called a taxi for me, and I got a ride home. And then the next day, I got a taxi back to my car that was left at the Golden Horseshoe. Um, yeah. So I don't know. Telling these stories leave me with a lot of anxiety feelings, and I think it's important to talk about them because I don't want to be that way again. I don't want to ever have to feel that way again, and I don't have to. Um, and my last story, I realized just now that I've already told this one in another episode, and that's just simply whenever there was a party in my neighborhood, whether it was my party where I had a kegger or there was another party, for some reason I always ended up in the lake where the fountain is. I lived on a golf course, and I would always end up swimming out to the fountain. I don't know, to prove that I could do it. I have no idea. It was disgusting in that lake. Like the whole bottom of the lake was just goose crap and and all of that. And so it was just disgusting and stinky. And there was one time in particular that I swam out to the fountain, and then I was on my way back. I was about halfway back from the fountain to the shore and realized that it was questionable if I was going to make it back. Um, and that was really scary for me. But these personality changes, like I said, you know, I liked what alcohol did to me. I like how it made me feel brave and feel cool, um, feel like I fit in. It's probably of a better term than cool. And and it seems over time that that personality change was more and more extreme, became more and more drastic. These were the times that I was 100% clueless that I was an alcoholic. I think other people thought I was an alcoholic. I've mentioned that my sorority had talked about the fact that I might be an alcoholic when I was in my, I mean, I hadn't even turned 21 yet, I don't think. And I had friends in my old neighborhood not want to hang out with me because I drank too much. And it didn't mean anything to me. It didn't, there was no, there was no like neon lights flashing saying you're an alcoholic. Maybe they were, and I was just not seeing them. I didn't look like an alcoholic. I mean, what do you think an alcoholic looks like? When I go into my sobriety meetings, I can tell you they look like you and me, but they also look like, some of them do look like what I thought they looked like from movies, the people that are living under a bridge or, living on the street. There's few and far between, but there are some that walk in the door of those meetings and they do look like that. But that's very short-lived. If they stay in the program, it's very short-lived that they look like they just came out from under a bridge, or were living in a box on the street, because that's what the program does. If you take the suggestions and you find a sponsor and you work the steps of the program, it's not long before your appearance starts changing. And it's interesting how I almost wonder if your appearance is the first thing that changes. I don't know. But I can tell you that I didn't realize that my appearance was changing until I ended up getting another driver's license, and I looked down at the new picture that I had and I compared it to my old driver's license, and I was like, "Oh my." It was like a different person. I looked so sick in my previous driver's license. So, an alcoholic can look like, your best friend, your coworkers. The more that I am open about my alcoholism, the more I have people that approach me that say that they too are an alcoholic and are working a sobriety program as well. And when I have somebody come up to me and say that, I am overjoyed, because that means to me that they've been given another chance to live. And I truly believe that the second half of my life is a new opportunity to live the way that I wanted to live, but I didn't know how. So alcoholics can look like executives at work. Alcoholics can look like housewives, football players, bus drivers, high school students. There are some people who get sober at the age of 18, 17, And when I look at those people, well, to be honest, when I first got sober and I saw such a young person come in to a meeting, I thought, well, I thought a few things. One, I thought, um, there's no way they can be an alcoholic already. That's what I thought. Um, Number two, I would think, oh, that's too bad. At least I got to live it up for 42 years, you know? Um, and then later on, longer I've been in sobriety, the more I look at these young people who come into the rooms and um, I think good for them. They're getting that chance to live the life that they can live early. They're going to have a long, fulfilling life because they started early. And unfortunately, a lot of these young people have had some really terrible things happen in their active drinking, and that's what brings them into the rooms. You also don't have to drink 24/7 like I did to be an alcoholic. Some people are binge drinkers. Um, I started out, well, I was drinking every day. I've always drank every day. Since I was like in high school, I drank every day. Um, but over time, I guess it wasn't until I started working at home for my family business that I started actually drinking all day, every day. So I drank every day for decades, really. Um, and I would also binge drink. I just whatever I could do, I just wanted alcohol, more. But some people don't drink every day and they are still alcoholics. And the only person who can say that somebody is an alcoholic is themselves. You know, um, I can't look at somebody and be like, oh, I think that she's an alcoholic. Like, just because I am one doesn't mean I know how to diagnose somebody else. We can only say that about ourselves. And back when I was actively drinking, most often I was not out making a fool of myself in these bars. Those are just some extraordinary experiences. Most of the time I was just being a mom. I was going to soccer games. I was going to watch my son uh, play in his bands and his gigs at local restaurants and stuff. Uh, I was at home cleaning. Oh, I love to vacuum and drink, or steam clean the carpet and drink. And uh, a lot of time I was just sitting on the couch with my glass of wine and drinking, and just staying in, sitting on the back porch. I spent a lot of time alone drinking my little elixir until I started introducing drinking to other things that I was doing, life stuff, you know. I started leaving the house more often having had drank. So going grocery shopping, um, driving wherever I had to drive, whether it was picking up my kids and or dropping them off in places. I did always make sure that if I was driving my kids, I never had too much to drink. But that's not an excuse. It's not okay to drink just a couple, you know, and because you know that you've got to go pick up your kids from a sleepover or something like that, or drop them off at a sleepover. Um, just having a couple, knowing that you have to do that is not okay. And I didn't see that back then. I did a lot of drinking on flights. I loved to drink in airports and on planes. And eventually I introduced my drinking to my job. And and uh and that's when I saw my life becoming unmanageable, because I knew right from wrong and I knew I was not supposed to be doing that. But I didn't know how to stop. I couldn't stop. And I just couldn't show up for life without a drink anymore. Uh, I got to the point where I would pass out with my wine. Sometimes I would pass out with the wine in my hand, which was quite a mess in the morning. And most of the time, I would have enough wherewithal to put the wine on my nightstand. But I would wake up in the middle of the night because I wasn't truly sleeping, I was passing out. So I would wake up in the middle of the night and reach over and have a sip of the wine, which at that point was like room temperature and had been sitting there for hours. And then in the morning, whatever was left in the glass, I would chug it before my or before my feet even hit the floor. You know, the personality change that alcohol gave me changed me from when I woke up in the morning, before I reached over and had that nasty leftover wine on my nightstand. I was thinking doom and gloom, anxiety, dread, sadness. But if I just took that one sip of that nasty leftover wine on my nightstand, my mindset would change in an instant from doom and gloom to, yay, I get to drink another day. It was it was just like that. I had a friend that I mentioned the other day that I went out to dinner with on Wednesday, and she was asking me a lot about what it felt like for me to drink, what it was like. And I was explaining, and she was fascinated that I had that kind of relationship with alcohol. And I truly believe that we can't explain to someone who's not an alcoholic what it feels like to be addicted to alcohol, what that high is that it gives us. It was just one sip. I mean, I remember one day I was having some challenges just even getting myself to work at this point. I had a neighbor that had suddenly passed away, and I was grieving her, which I was friends with her, and because I was constantly drinking at this point, what I thought I was doing was grieving, but I wasn't. I was just drinking and crying and not showing up for life. I wasn't processing anything. I was doing quite the opposite. And I remember uh, at one point sitting, I had started driving to work, and then I got to the top of the mountain on Route 9, and I pulled into the gas station, and I was like, I can't do this. And I went in and I bought a bottle of wine, and I started driving back the other way towards home. And I pulled into a random neighborhood under construction, and I called the HR department and I said, I can't do it. I can't come in. I'm still grieving or something. I don't even remember what I said. And but I didn't make that call until I opened that bottle of wine and I took my first sip. And when I took that sip, this is what I felt. Oh, that's what it felt like. It felt like every bit of tense, you know, stress and just everything. I can't even, I'm speechless. I can't even think of the word for it, but just everything that was pent up inside of me just released, with one sip. I didn't even need to feel drunk. I just needed one sip. And it was like all those happy chemicals that I always talk about just started releasing in my body. That's what just one drink did for me. So, today I don't have to pick up a glass of wine when I get up to be excited about my day. And I'm not thinking about, I'm thinking about the day itself and what I'm going to do in it. And before, I was just thinking about today is a day I get to drink. Period. That was the thing that I was going to do that day, every day. And today I wake up, I don't think, yay, I get to another day to drink. I just think, yay, I get another day. And that's when I start thinking about, oh, I'm going to work on my quilt. I'm going to work on all my different projects that I'm working on. So this program that I've been talking about, all of these techniques and all of this stuff that I talk about in the podcast, it gives me a static personality change, one that just remains, not one that needs a refill, not one that requires me to take some sort of substance, any mind-altering substance, no matter what it is. I don't need it, because if I practice this program in recovery, and I've been talking during this episode about sobriety, but it very much applies to my stroke recovery, that because I've been practicing it for so long, that I can wake up in the morning. I'm trained to wake up in the morning and think, yay, I have another day. Yes, sometimes I wake up and think, okay, I have another day, but I'm never waking up anymore and pulling the covers back over my head and thinking, no, not another day, because that's what I used to think. So I'm really grateful that I have this outlet personally to share these experiences, because it makes me uncomfortable. And if I'm uncomfortable, that means that I'm growing. And that means that I bet somebody else can relate to at least one story. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.